Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where we love beyond belief. Whoever you are, wherever you're arriving from this morning, whoever you love, whatever your background, whatever you do or do not believe, you are welcome here. Welcome to you if this is your first time at First U, and welcome to you if you've been coming here for decades. Welcome to everyone assembled here in the meeting house, and also welcome to everyone who's watching on our YouTube channel from nearby or from far away. My name is Annie Bissett, and I'm happy to be your worship associate this morning. If you were here last week, you may recall that I was worship associate last week as well. I am serving in this role as a member of the First U Worship Committee. Our committee hosts these summer services while our ministers are away, and in these services we draw on the wisdom and the talents of our members and our friends. This morning we are pleased to welcome Karen Rand Anderson as our speaker. Karen is an artist who lives and works in Pawtucket. The driving force that keeps her sparked is a passion for personal creative expression that comes from an inner emotional place. Born and raised in upstate New York, she first came to Providence in 1971 to attend RISD. After graduating in 1977, she moved to Connecticut, married, and raised two daughters, both of whom are artists themselves, before returning to Providence in 2010. Karen joined First U in 2020. Music this morning will be provided by Claire Rosenbaum. Thank you, Claire. And we have Michael Capelli helping us with tech. Just a reminder, speaking of tech, please silence your cell phones. And let us now center our hearts and minds and begin our worship with a musical prelude. Each Sunday, we light a chalice to signal the entry of our beloved gathered community into sacred space. Please join Karen and me for the lighting of our chalice by reciting the words which are found in your order of service. This light burns also in our hearts, and it lights our path towards harmony, justice, and hope for all. Now is our time to greet one another, so I invite everyone to please stand as you are able and say hello to the folks sitting nearby, perhaps walk around a little bit and say hello to people not so close by. And as you make your way back to your seat, with an extension cord. Please, before we sit down or as we're sitting, wave to the folks on the YouTube. Say hello to everyone who's joining in that way. And now that we've practiced community by greeting one another, let's recite together our more formal call to beloved community in the form of our church covenant, which is also found in your order of service. We, the members of the First Unitarian Church of Providence, with respect for the worth and dignity of each person, with wonder at the light we know by many names, and with gratitude for our deep connection to each other and to the larger web of existence, covenant to walk together in our search for truth, seeking the paths of wisdom, compassion, and justice. And now let's sing together hymn number 40, "The Morning Hangs a Signal." poem by Alex Koloff. Let your life be your art. Allow the golden, glistening moments to weave themselves into an intricately crafted tapestry of experiences, thread by thread, intertwining past, present, and future into one awe-inspiring spectacle for the universe to behold here, now. Let your life be your art, the way you move your body as you work on the street, in the forest, in the kitchen. Allow the carefully choreographed way your hands dance as you prepare dinner to become a performance, rhythmically chopping and stirring and mixing. Let your life be your art. Surrender your speech to poetry. Note the beauty of your articulations as they land on the ears of your beloved, like a sonnet, caressing them with love, understanding, and compassion, igniting light, illuminating their loveliness. Let your life be your art, the way your feet lovingly graze the earth like paint strokes on a canvas, sketching the soil, each step with a brilliant palette of gentleness, care, lightness. Let your life be your art. A brilliant palette of gentleness and care. One of the ways that we here at First U express our care for each other is by sharing our joys and sorrows, which are brought to our community in the book that is available to write in every Sunday at the back of the meeting house. The beautiful candlestick for the large candle from which we light our individual candles was carved for us by members of our partner church in Transylvania. Last week, I unfortunately missed 2 joys and sorrows. If they were yours, I apologize, and I include those I missed this morning. A candle of love for my daughter, who is homesick at camp. A candle of sorrow and remembrance for my dog, who passed away 2 months ago. He was my rock. I love you, Jasper. Prayers for my father, who received an unexpected, highly aggressive cancer diagnosis last week, and a candle of joy for his amazing support network, who will be with him every step of the way. A candle of concern and support for our son, who is struggling to find his footing. Happy birthday to Adam. How did 39 wonderful years pass so fast? And John Crestwell, a colleague of our minister Liz, who preached here at First U in April, has just learned that his wife Joni has stage 4 ovarian cancer. John and Joni are requesting our prayers. Friends, let us rest in gladness that we have each other to share in our joys and sorrows. It makes all the difference. As we prepare for meditation, I'd like to tell you that at one of our meetings in preparation for today's service, Karen shared with me that she had been reading a book called The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. I picked up a copy at the library and I found this passage which seemed like a perfect reading to guide us into meditation. It's about listening, which is a big part of creativity. How do we hear the voice of inspiration? Most often, hints of inspiration and direction from source are small. They appear as tiny signals traveling through the void of space, quiet and subtle, like a whisper. To hear whispers, the mind must be quiet. We pay close attention on all fronts, our antennas sensitively tuned. Boosting our receptivity may require a relaxing of effort. trying can get in the way. Wherever the whisper comes from, it comes by grace, not effort. A whisper cannot be wrestled into existence, only welcomed with an open state of mind. So let's take a few moments of silence together. You might want to close your eyes or just soften your gaze and just do a little bit of listening. See what's here. If you've lost someone in the past year and you would like to mark that, please, you are welcome to stand or raise your hand during this time. Our speaker, Karen Rand Anderson.
The drive to create. Spirit as an essential aspect of art making. Good morning. I'll bet there are a number of people here today who identify as being an artist in some form or another. And there are probably some who don't feel that they're an artist at all. So that said, just for fun, a quick show of hands. How many of you consider yourself an artist in some form? Some form. Just could be whatever you love to do and do it creatively. Yeah, well, a lot. There you go, you see. While my talk today is centered around being in touch with spirituality in terms of making art, and therefore aimed at artists of all kinds, I believe that everyone has a choice to live their life artfully from a place of spiritual creativity. Being aware of simple daily acts of creativity in our lives can be done from a place of spiritual awareness, if we so choose. In other words, living a consciously creative life. You could call it living artfully with a spiritual bent, or something like that. I want to introduce you to this book, thanks, that was recently published. It's The Creative Act that Annie mentioned, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. So you may not know who Rick Rubin is. He is quite a character, and he's interesting and quite famous, so I'll leave it up to you to Google him. In any case, it's not a chapter book, though it has chapters, and it's not a self-help book, though it's loaded with nuggets of advice and wisdom. And while it is a book aimed at creatives, on the first page, Mr. Rubin says, those who do not engage in the traditional arts might be wary of calling themselves artists. They might perceive creativity as something extraordinary or beyond their capabilities. Fortunately, this is not the case. Creativity is a fundamental aspect of being human. It's our birthright, and it's for all of us. It doesn't exclusively relate to making art. We all engage in this act on a daily basis. To create is to bring something into existence that wasn't there before. For instance, I would say a freshly arranged bouquet of wildflowers, a perfect or imperfect spinach souffle, a pleasing rearrangement of your living room furniture, a meaningful and heartfelt letter. While these things might be considered mundane and not seen as artistic or spiritual, if done in a conscious and mindful manner, they can encompass a creative, artful, and spiritual way of living. Mr. Rubin goes on to say lots more. It's a thick book. And to be honest, I think my whole talk could be just reading passages to you from this book, as well as from others in my personal library, such as Vasily Kandinsky's 1914, Concerning the Spiritual in Art, centering by the ceramist M.C. Richards, or Robert Henri's 1923, The Art Spirit. But then I wouldn't have written this talk. In any case, Rubin ends that short first chapter with a sentence, attuned choice by attuned choice, your entire life is a form of self-expression. You exist as a creative being in a creative universe, a singular work of art. I've always been intrigued by the concept of sacred art making and its history, starting with the red ochre handprints and paintings of bison on cave walls 15,000 years ago. But in general, I think of spirituality in art as a loose phrase. It's been bandied about a lot in recent years, but 20 years ago, it was rather a taboo subject in contemporary art, and I'll get to that later. There are many artists, and I'm referring to all the arts, visual and performing, writing and music, who seek to express political, environmental, or socially relevant things that are vitally important to bring to light at this perilous time in our world. Others want to make playful, fun statements, and that's also important. At the same time, other artists are here to bring forth beauty and a sense of the spiritual. Rick Rubin states, the word inspiration comes from the Latin inspirare. I don't know if I said that right, if there's any Latin people here, but that means to breathe in or blow into. Taken more spiritually, inspiration means to breathe life into. For the artist, inspiration is the breath of creative force drawn in from outside of our own small selves, our own egos. Quote. I would say that this breath originates from source, whatever you imagine that to be. I often interchange the words mystery and spirit to define source. For me, they all swirl together under the umbrella of the universe. An artist friend once asked me, how do you know if when you're in touch with source in your art? How do you conceptualize or experience it? Like a well, a quiet space, the eye of the storm, or the storm itself? So those are heady questions. In trying to answer them, I decided that the way it happens for me in the studio is by first bringing in an attitude of gratitude and slowing down, observing, and breathing. Trying not to overthink. Now that's the challenge. Meaningful music helps. Maybe reggae, maybe Bach. I sit down and write out thoughts, questions, and ideas in my studio journal, and often answers seem to follow. And when I paint, through connecting with my own physical energy, making marks on the canvas, the feeling of the brush in my hand, focusing on color, and how the paint moves, how my body moves. So perhaps the answer to her question would be all of the above. There was a period of time for about 10 years when I gave up art making and my creative path. I was newly married, forging a life as a devoted wife and renovating an old house. Then came my first daughter, and 5 years later, my second. Then years of mothering, wifing, building a new home. While my life was wonderful on so many levels, I was unconsciously suffering a sense of loss, isolation, and a severing from my true self, my artist self. When people asked the inevitable and dreaded question, "Oh, what do you do?" I would say, "Well, I used to be an artist. I went to art school." Then in 1995, the universe stepped in and said, "You are an artist. Remember?" And I began to re-embrace that fact. It took a long time to rekindle that elemental part of me, but the spark was still there, and eventually it grew into the flame it needed to be. I was able to nurture that flame, reconnect with my art practice. The fire was relit. I first began keeping a studio art journal when I was a student at RISD in the early 1970s. This journal was a large, hardbound sketchbook where I kept ideas, sketches, and writings. When I lost my creative way in 1985, I lost that original journal. It was packed in a box somewhere. Oddly enough, it resurfaced 10 years later, just as I was rediscovering my artist self. Obviously, the universe at work. And when I opened it and began reading, I was stunned to find that it contained exactly what I needed to see and rediscover, just like I'd finished writing and drawing in it the day before. It was totally relevant to me, still. Do you know that feeling? When you reconnect with an old friend and you're able to pick up where you left off. My journey was back on track. I now have a dozen large studio journals that I've filled over the past 28 years, and they contain a continuing record of that journey. The one that intertwines my life as an artist seeker with my life as a spirit seeker. So, back to spirituality and art. In 2005, when I was 52, I applied and was accepted into a fine art degree program in Vermont. It was a low residency program where MFA candidates would attend on campus for a month at a time and then go home and work for several months before returning for the next residency. Northern Vermont University is in the tiny mountain town of Johnson, Vermont, population 1,300. And the residencies were done there at Vermont Studio Center, an artist residency in the heart of town center, residency center. This creative environment was art heaven, along with having your own studio, your own room, 3 fabulous meals every day at the center. There were also critiques and lectures by well-known visiting artists and writers, and the opportunity to connect with artists of all backgrounds and ages from all over the world. I had received my BFA undergraduate from RISD when I was 24, and I'd always yearned to go to graduate school. Finally getting the courage and funding to do so at this late stage of the game, I was thrilled, as well as terrified, to be an art student again, jumping back into a rigorous academic program. As a graduate student, I had opportunities to dive deep into my personal creative journey, and I discovered new ways of creating that seemingly came out of nowhere, but in fact were gifts from the universe. One of those gifts was an opportunity to propose an independent study research paper. The topic I proposed was sacred creativity, examining spirituality in contemporary art. And my statement to my art history professor went something like this. Bear with me. My proposal for this subject centers around the nature and reasoning of spirituality in contemporary art. Which artists are seeking to convey a sense of the sacred and how? And what is this doing for contemporary art as a whole? What drives some artists to self-express or create from a sacred place? Is creating art from a sacred place the original essence of art making? I believe it is. This independent study project will be relative to my work as an MFA candidate, and that my ongoing work as an artist, while varying in medium and content, continually reflects my personal vision pertaining to a creative search for the spiritual. So this was in 2008, and in case you're not a contemporary art historian, how many of you are? Right. In the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, there was explosive work coming out of the art world, much of it driven by artists who wanted to shock, dismay, confuse, confront, anger, or disturb the viewer. Also, perhaps, amass fame and fortune, and some did. The subject of spirituality in art was almost taboo. Too woo-woo. The word itself sometimes brought eye rolls. Some of the non-MFA residency artists at Vermont Studio Center were young, newly minted art school graduates. I recall mentioning this paper to one of them. His jaded response was, "Well, good luck with that." He seemed to consider the subject absurd, meaningless, and not worth pursuing. But in truth, according to Rick Rubin, our work embodies a higher purpose. Whether we know it or not, we're a conduit for the universe. Material is allowed through us. If we are a clear channel, our intention reflects the intention of the cosmos. Intention is all there is. The work is just a reminder. I can't recall when I first heard the phrase, "We are spiritual beings having a human experience," but it was many years ago. That phrase hit home then, and it keeps hitting home a little more deeply as I age. In a personal sense, it's been at the forefront of how I relate to art in general, which is from a place of wonder, mystery, and questing, a place of spirit. Now, as creative human beings, our minds want to be in control. They want to have the first and last word about what's good, valuable, and worthwhile. I call this phenomenon, this is my personal little thing here, I call it the JEM, the judging ego mind. Your JEM might say things like, "What? You think you're an artist? That painting, or that cake, that outfit, that drawing, that poem is terrible. It sucks." Sometimes your JEM might say, "Well, not bad, but you really need to up your game. Your work is nowhere near as good as XYZ's. And by the way, see how many Instagram followers they have?" Or conversely, "XYZ is an idiot. Look at that awful stuff they're putting out. And they're getting famous for it. You're so much better than that." Or the fearful phrase, "Don't let XYZ see what you're doing. They might steal your ideas." I think the best way to upend your JEM is to befriend it and stop listening to it. Thank it for its opinion, kick it out the door. We all have the choice to use our unique and personal connections to source as a way to access individual creative expression. Choosing to share it with others magnifies its meaning and import. As Mr. Rubin says, "Sharing what we make is a gift to others. Our work can circulate and become source material for others." The goal is to just create and be creative without your JEM telling you what to do, how to do it, and judging it. Quiet that voice by tuning in to your own connection with Source, the spiritual part of your unique creative self. Be a creative spiritual being having a creative human experience. Again, Rick Rubin. Without the spiritual component in art making, the work is missing spark. A spiritual viewpoint is boundless and visionary. In the contemporary art world, there have always been what the art historian and critic Roger Lipsey called the brats. Highly successful artists, nationally and internationally known, whose work, though interesting, is based on pop culture or an ego-driven quest for fame, the right galleries, collectors, etc. Lipsey contrasts the brats with another type of artist he calls the seeker. He contends that some brats are often taken very seriously by critics, collectors, and museums, and that their work will be permanently inscribed in the history of art as it generates intriguing and cultural insights. But that kind of art often relates unabashedly to self-referenced personal glorification that reflects, let's face it, a shallow and ego-centered awareness. Granted, as I mentioned previously, there is a place for, as well as a need for, all kinds of art, including that which might cause discomfort, disgust, or even pain in the viewer. It may seek to wake us up. Social inequality, environmental tragedies, political upheaval, injustice of all kinds. These are issues that artists have always felt the need to illustrate and bring to view. That's important. But generally, I prefer to get my art fix through art that shares an artist's vision of beauty, wonder, and mystery, the type of art made by the seeker. Many of those seekers may not be rich and famous, though some are. And thankfully, there are many artist seekers in the world. There always have been, and there always will be. Some are here in this sanctuary today. I'm happy to report that since 2008, when I wrote that 28-page paper, it's now clear that in today's complex contemporary art world, the whole idea of spirituality in art has in fact flourished, blossomed, and bloomed. I concluded my graduate school paper with this. Due in part to the turbulent social, political, economic, religious, and environmental unrest on our planet, as well as the ever-increasing speed of technological advances in today's global communications and transportation systems, there is a pervasive sense of discontent or dis-ease. Our society is feeling a cultural dearth of spiritual focus. We as a species are beginning to wake up to our need for spiritual sustenance. Artists have traditionally been the harbingers of societal trends, and the current trend to embrace a sense of the sacred in contemporary art should come as no surprise. Whatever the reason, there appears to be what could be called a paradigm shift within the contemporary art world, one that is pulling more and more artists into a deeper examination of how to make art that can somehow address, help to transform, and heal the societal illnesses that plague us. The angsty young artist who doubted the idea for my paper 15 years ago was happily wrong. And maybe by now he has found his own relationship with Source to create art that brings meaning, wonder, and magic into the world. I truly hope so. In closing, I'll leave you with one more quote from Mr. Rubin, and then I urge you to get the book. We each create uniquely, bringing a singular vision into being. The creative tool is you or me, and through creating and expressing our vision in our own manner, Source comes into focus. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Please now stand as you are able and join in singing hymn number 404, What Gift Can We Bring? seated. What gift can we bring? What present? What token? When grateful we come. First Unitarian of Providence is a spiritual community who govern ourselves through democratic process and who support ourselves through our own collective generosity. We take responsibility for how we conduct ourselves as individuals and as a community, and love and generosity are among our core spiritual values. Our annual pledges are the expression of generosity, which provides most of this financial support for the mission of this church. And our weekly offering is an extension of that support. We invite you to join in the spirit of love and generosity. And as always, we thank you for all that you give, all that you do, and all that you are. We will now take today's offering. Everyone is welcome to join us after the service for refreshments. It takes place in this breezeway between this building and the parish hall. If you're a first-time visitor, please be sure to stop at the welcome table. And next week, we hope you'll come again. Our guest speaker will be Reese Robinson, and the title of her talk is Life as Ritual. Let's close our service now by reciting the words in your order of service for the chalice extinguishing. We carry the flame of peace and love and hope until we meet again.